Hello, my name is Beck and welcome to a video where I discuss adaptations. So these are all the adaptations that I enjoyed, but I had read the books first. So when I went into these adaptations, I obviously had preconceived notions, but it turned out that I enjoyed them anyway. So let's get into my list. The first one probably won't be a surprise, and that is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. I went to all of the midnight screenings for each of these films with a friend and I adored them. I think it captured the heart and soul of these books, but in a way that was translatable to a different medium, and I appreciate that they kept a lot of the key factors from the books and portrayed that, because to me that's what makes the film so accurate, and it's why I loved the film so much. Obviously they did leave a couple of things out, some key things, especially with disabilities and hearing problems and a leg injury and stuff like that, which is what frustrated me the most about these. And I don't like the way that the corporations pushed the Hunger Games in the same way that the corporations in the actual book pushed the Hunger Games. It's a very interesting way to view pop culture if you analyze the film and the movie, I think. But I enjoyed the films anyway, and I enjoyed the experience of going at a midnight screening to a movie that I'd already read the content for. So it was cool to expect things and see the different twists they put on, because I think it was a fairly accurate portrayal, at least if you ask me. I'm sure other people have a lot of different opinions, because this is kind of a linchpin when it comes to young adult dystopia, and so it became a very big franchise and a lot of people have opinions, but my opinion is I enjoyed it, so hopefully that is yours as well, but come and chat to me down below if it's not. Next up is a science fiction, and this is actually a movie that I feel deviated a fair bit from the book, but it felt like it also kind of had to in order to portray the key things, and that is Ready Player One. I liked the way that this was such a visual meal when it came to a film. When I was reading the book Ready Player One, pieces of it felt dry, and I'm glad that it took the things out of it that I was interested in for the film to portray. But at the same time, I feel like there was some detail that was left over that could have been potentially included. I'm obviously not spoiling anything in this video, so I'm being vague, but I really wish that I could love the movie more, but I did give the book 4 stars, and it had a lot of references in there that I felt could translate really well, but at the same time also you're limited with film because of copyright. So I think they did a really good job based on what they had. Even though they changed a few things, especially about the beginning, I still enjoyed the film. It was still a visual spectacle, and I loved the adaptation of VR and how that is now kind of becoming our reality as well. Like, we have access to VR. So it was crazy reading this like 5 or 6 to even 10 years ago, and now seeing VR be a thing that we can consume and enjoy at the same time. So I think that's wild, and I just think it's awesome. I enjoyed the film for what it was, and I enjoyed the book for what it was. They were just a sci-fi fun experience with virtual reality. Next might be another controversial one, given how many adaptations of his films are in existence in general, but the most recent adaptation of It by Stephen King I actually enjoyed. I feel like they left things out which could have definitely supported the story more, but overall I liked it. Bill Hader was definitely my favourite part about the films, and I think his character added a new bit of flair that we didn't get the depth of in the book. I still found it intense in places, and I still found it interesting. Unfortunately, I still have very mixed feelings about the ending, but I'm not going to go there in case you haven't read it. But I think they could have teased things out when it came to certain plot lines, especially at the beginning, that are in the book but not in the film. And I think if I had that detail in the film, I would have loved it rather than just enjoyed it. It could have added some multifaceted angle, but to be fair, there was already a lot going on in the film, and pieces of it I didn't enjoy, but for the most part it was just a spectacle, again like Ready Player One, and I enjoyed it for what it was. So it was, I hesitate to say fun because it's not a fun book or movie, but it was an interesting time and I'm glad I experienced it. Next is one that I can only speak to kind of, because it's Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin, and I only read the first 2 books in this series, and I got about a third through the 3rd book, and then I DNF'd that. And so from what I've read of the book and from the entirety of the show that I've seen, I like the consistency there, but I know because my dad's read all of the books and he talked to me about spoilers because I didn't care, because I knew I wasn't going to continue reading the series. He told me a lot of spoilers about the later books and how the show had set up for specific things that hadn't allowed space for when it came to the book. So the book had plot and trajectory and more magic, I guess, than the adaptation did, and I wanted more magic out of the adaptation. I feel like we only got more of that in the later seasons, and it wasn't as groundbreaking as I thought it would be, and it was just used more so for spectacle rather than story, and that's what let me down about the show. I'm one of the people that did not like the ending ending because it was very inconsistent. And so if I look at it with the beginning seasons and the beginning books, I like it. If I look at it as the later seasons of just the show, because I haven't read the books, bit of a mess there. But I enjoyed the beginning. Now my last two vary considerably from their initial book format, but I liked both of those things. So the second last one I want to discuss is World War Z. And I loved both the book and the film, but it took me a few tries to get into the book and I ended up going the audiobook route. And here's why. The movie is very action centric. So it just lifted the title of the book and put it on the film. But the book takes place after the film does. So the film is very action-packed, it's very apocalyptic, and the zombie virus is happening and it's a massive problem. But in the book, it actually has a retrospective kind of thing going on where our interviewer is going through different countries and interviewing key people from each place to say, hey, what was your story? How did you fight the outbreak? What was this interesting thing about it? And so it delved more into the detail about individual situations and individual characters and individual mechanisms that link directly to the world building and the mentality of people at the time. So it had the scope to be very specific, but it's like the film took that and adapted it into this big action movie. And because it was so fast-paced, terrifying, and obviously fast-moving and tense, I loved the film, but probably watching it while I was on a cruise ship with my family was not a good idea because a cruise ship is a very bad place for a zombie virus. And so that just added to the stress of watching the movie for me. And I think that's why it left an impact on me, because it did take the essence of what the apocalypse was in the book, but it translated it to make it very real and feel very lived when it was in the film. So it had that grander scale action feeling for the film, and I felt that feeling while reading the book, but it was more in the background or more related to people's individual stories and their mentality in the book. So it did take the essence of a book and adapt it, but I don't think it should have been called World War Z when that's not what the book conveyed in the first place, if that makes sense. And then the last one on this list is a bit of a laugh, but I love it and I've seen it more than once. So it is Vampire Academy. I read this series when I was 15 or 16, at the same time I was reading and loving stuff like Twilight. I had a whole vampire phase and I'm not afraid to admit it. Vampire Academy was definitely part of that phase, and I loved how magic was integrated and a bunch of different kinds of vampires were integrated as well. And that in the film didn't really necessarily translate, but the magical school vibe definitely did. So while it wasn't necessarily a toe-to-toe adaptation of exactly what the book had, it still adapted it enough where it was self-aware and made fun of itself. And so it knew it wasn't like the book, but it also had elements that were a bit of a crossover from the book. So it was convincing enough, but it was also self-aware to poke enough fun at itself. And I liked that about it. I liked that charm and that charisma about it. And I like the world building and the characters when I first read Vampire Academy. I think those two things can very peacefully coexist. I'm 100% sure that there are people that disagree with me, but for me, I just love the romp that was that film, and I loved that series because it really started and kickstarted my reading, especially of longer series, because it's 5 or 6 books long. And I think that was a very key cornerstone in young me's life for reading. And when I watched the film as an adult, it just made me reminisce about all the good times I had when I was reading the series. So on that good note, that is the end of this video. Do let me know down below if there is an adaptation that you like, whether it was a TV series, a movie, or anything else. I would love to hear, but thank you so much for watching this video. I'll chat to you down in the comments, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.